Well, hey, thanks for jumping on and seeing this video. I'm having a conversation with my friend and now author, founding pastor of Redemption City Church in Franklin, Tennessee, and now author of 21 Days to Childlike Prayer, Jed Coppenger. What is up, Jed?
What's going on, Freddie?
Hey, man,
Great
thanks for jumping on here.
Absolutely.
You and I are both like technology whizzes. So we tried this last week, swing and a miss. This is like our third attempt. I think we're getting it today. But so we were trying to record a conversation about a book that you wrote that was released last week.
Yeah.
So we tried that last week, swung and missed. So here we are a week now after your book has released.
Yeah.
And I'm actually glad that we're talking now instead of last week, because now I get to hear, okay, a week after your brand new book is released, like, how's it been? Jed, 21 Days to Childlike Prayer is the name of your book.
Uh-huh.
What was the catalyst to write this book?
Yeah. So I knew for the longest time I had the worst prayer life. Okay. I knew the Bible talked about praying, and I knew I had been to seminary. I'd read books on prayer, and like a lot of people, I struggled to actually pray in any kind of meaningful way, in any kind of integrated way in my life. And I certainly didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody else about their prayer life, And so I know what it is to struggle, and down deep, you have this gnawing sense of, when someone adds your prayer life, not what it should be. But then I also know what it's like to discover the prayer life that you feel like this is what the Bible's talking about in a way that fits in your life, in a way that grows your faith and your joy, and you see specific answers to prayer that are yeses, and also you grow through the no's that you get from the Lord, where He's like, no, we're not gonna do that kind of thing. And so when you see God's power and presence in your problems and plans, once you experience that, you really want other people to experience it as well. And so that is what I started. That's where it started for me. And then I started to help people in my church over the years. And they started to be able to see the same kinds of things in their lives in a way that that eventually led to the book. And I really have a heart as a pastor to try to help people go through this journey together, because when I think you multiply the people that are going through it, you multiply the joy and the fun of it as well. So that's kind of why it's a 21 Days to Childlike Prayer.
So this kind of grew out of your own experience.
Absolutely. Own struggles.
Knowing prayer is like the core basic, and yet not feeling like a champ in prayer, but something shifted in your life where you felt like you really dialed into God's heart for prayer.
That's right. And I mentioned this briefly in the first chapter of the book, where I really went through one of the worst seasons of my life. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of that terrible time, I found the prayer life that I've been looking for.
Wow.
And so I really want people to learn what I learned without going through what I went through.
Yeah. Well, I just hear hope in what you just said, because so many folks that are, stumbled on this little video today, they may be going through the worst season of their life. And to hear you say, God gave me the prayer life that I always needed, and out of it, I wrote a book that's now blessing thousands of people's lives. That's a pretty hope-filled story from your life. Jed, what's the core message of the book? If you had to just give us like the elevator spiel of, here's the core of the book.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the beautiful thing about I think the prayer life that Jesus teaches his disciples about in the Lord's Prayer primarily, but you can also find throughout the scripture, which is what the book focuses on, the Lord's Prayer there, is that you don't have to be what we often think we need to be prayer warriors, which is to be these spiritually sophisticated, intense, disciplined people.
Loud, fancy words.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Lord's Prayer, he talks about the father-child relationship there at the very beginning. And that's so important to understand, because he's showing us that in order to have the prayer life Jesus wants you to have, you don't have to become spiritually sophisticated. You just need to become more childlike. Mm-hmm. And a child that's at that stage where he asks for his parents, for things like daily bread. So that's a highly dependent stage of childhood, right? That he's saying that's the key. And so that means all you need to do in order to become to have the prayer life that Jesus wants you to have, or one of the main things you need to do there, is just bring what any kid would bring to his parents: problems, unreasonable plans and dreams, and all kinds of mess, with a boldness that walks into a room in the middle of the night in a way no one else could. Like that kind of childlike perspective. And Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. He doesn't say, come to me, all of you who've got your stuff together and have neatly ordered your journal and your this and your that. He says, just bring all your mess to me. Right. And so that's the heart of the book, is really exploring that concept of, hey, you want to have the prayer life you want. You don't need to become more spiritually sophisticated. Just become more childlike.
I love that. I think your book so needed to be written. And here's why. When I was growing up walking with the Lord, in my early days of my relationship with God, I would pray when I couldn't find my keys. Literally, I'd be missing my favorite hat, and I would pray about it. And then I went to seminary and got sophisticated, as you said, and began to not bring those little things to God with a childlike heart. And I was sharing with a group of college students just the other night that I want to return to that kind of childlike faith in my prayer life. And then you write this book. So amazing. My son was having a hard time with his basketball practice early on. And, Jed, like I didn't know anything else to tell him other than to pray about it. Yeah. And he did. And a couple of days later, I said, how was practice today? He was like, it was good. It was really good. And he said, I've been praying about it. And I was like, right on. You were telling me a story about a third grader. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So, the book hasn't been out for 21 days, but we're one of the prayers that I've prayed in, and I wrote it in the book, but I have been praying that God would answer the specific prayers of people, or at least some of them. Again, we've got thousands of yeses over the years, but we've got way more no's over the years. But I'm praying that God would answer people's prayers, and we're already having those stories come in. So last night, I heard from someone who is friends with a mother, and who has a son, is in the third grade, and the dad is overseas for work. Has been overseas for a while and is going to be overseas for a while. And so they're there, and the poor kid in third grade is being bullied consistently, right? And so you just think, oh man, and the mom thought, well, maybe we can go through this together, and tried to write the book accessible. I'm so encouraged that a third grader could go through it. I, obviously kind of looked at my kids who were a little bit older and said, all right, you got no excuses now. But so this kid, he reads it, and they go through this, and they're through the first week. I guess they've been moving at a pretty good pace. And so he prayed, Lord, would you stop the bullying? Make it so I can just go through a day without being bullied. And the mom shared with it that he came home, and the kid was so overjoyed, like in a way that he felt like, us, we're kind of like, maybe that would have happened anyways, but the kid was like, God answered my prayer. I didn't get bullied today. Like in a way, he felt like the living God was taking care of his problems at his school in the third grade, right? That is a beautiful picture of a high view of God's power. He can do anything. He can control the bullies in the third grade at your school, and a high view of his love. And he cares about my problems in my school. With everything else going on in the world, he's still a big enough God with his love that he's going to help me with mine. So that was awesome. I also, she mentioned that he also prayed that they'd have pancakes for lunch. I think it was waffles, pancakes, something like this. And they didn't. And but the kid said, well, I guess that's not what was best for me, because God always does what's best for me. So just for him to see that childlike trust, which is that final component of God always does what's best for us. so we can thank him ahead of time, right? He's getting that here in the third grade, but also seeing those specific answers to prayer. And he's taking those specific requests to the Lord and battling what most of us struggle with as adults, which is that vague prayer syndrome, which is, the thing that kills all of our prayer lives. That he got specific. He knew whether or not God split his Red Sea.
Yeah, I love it. A lot of times when I'm preparing a sermon, I'll ask in my head, how would I say this so a third grader would understand it? So you've written a book that you broke it down, and that's what we need, man. I mean, really, that's what we need, our handles. I mean, we need to take these spiritual concepts that are often mysterious, and we need to break it down in simple ways that Monday through Saturday, it's changing our lives. So, brother, thank you for writing this book, 21 Days to Childlike Prayer. You just go right through it. You can go through it with groups. You can read it alone. You recommend reading it with folks so you can grow in community together. You can get on Amazon right now, have it delivered. And that's fantastic. Jed, let me ask you this. Let me just take one other angle before we jump off of here.
Okay.
I've never written a book, but I maybe aspired to. I think I feel like I've got a couple of core messages in me. You're a dad with how many kids?
3.
3 kids. You're the founding pastor of a church that is not even 10 years old yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
8.5.
Yeah. How old? 7.5?
8.5 years old. Yeah.
8.5. So, and you wrote a book in the middle of your life. So how would you, if somebody's watching this like me, that's like, I want to write a book. I've got a message in me, but man, what was your key? What was the secret to your being able to crank out the book?
I think that for me, it didn't start with me thinking, the book stuff's always out there, right?
Right.
But for me, the process was more about where can I be most helpful to people?
That's good.
In a way that might offer something unique that they can't get. So so it's something you're passionate about. It's something you're praying about, which I would say, and I certainly did this at certain stages where I'm like, all right, Lord, if you wanted to make this go forward, I got very specific, and it was very private, and it was amazing how God showed me to take steps forward.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a topic you're passionate about, that you see is God's using to impact others on. And because at the end of the day, if you can move on from it, then you won't really want to move too deep into it.
It's good.
And if you don't move too deep into it, then you probably won't move out. It won't be worth the time you put into it to get out to people,
Yeah.
So I just say,
like you had to write it.
Yeah, I think especially for you, it's going to come out of your preaching ministry. Yeah. It may not be a sermon. Right. It may be a part of a sermon,
right?
But it's going to be preaching, or it's going to be your counseling, your leadership development. There's going to be some aspect there God's going to do something there, and it'll start in a message. Yeah. Then it'll probably overflow into some social media, and then it might even turn into a blog post or two, or in an article. And next thing you know, it's kind of the thing you kind of go back to when you can preach on anything.
Yeah.
Because if I could preach on anything, this is what I'm preaching on.
Nice.
And so that's that, you know what I mean? That would be I get excited about it. I get excited. So I think once that starts to come about, then you go on from there and turn into a little book proposal and what it might look like. You don't have to tell anybody about it, just what it might look like. And next thing you know, God shows you the next step and you're on your way.
Well, I'm excited to put your book at our church bookstore. So I hope a bunch of real lifers read it and become, prayer warriors, but simple childlike prayers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
But what kind of closing exhortation would you have for folks? Some that are going to read the book, and some that are not. So give us just a closing exhortation.
Yeah. So the book it's 3 weeks, right? So the first week it gives you the principles for a daily, really short daily prompts to help your prayer life. The second one helps you put those principles into practice. Yeah. Because if you don't integrate it, it's going to go away. Yeah. And then the third one is we explore deeper how thinking of yourself as a child of God changes your perspective on your day and the stories that God has created you to be a part of. And so your prayer life is meant to change your perspective. But I'd say this is how I'd summarize it, and this is the heart of the book right here. And if they don't get it, maybe this will encourage them to get going where they are. The two main reasons you don't pray, I've got 4 statements. The 2 main reasons you don't pray are the first 2 statements. Number 1 is believe God can do anything. If you don't have a high enough view of God, you won't ask him for help. And I struggled for the longest time to get this right. And then it finally clicked. I just don't think he'll help me with this or that. And I didn't realize that's just unbelief. And so we have to either have a low view of his power or of his love or his wisdom or whatever. We just think, and we've got to come and get in touch with that ugly reality. We just don't think he can help us. That's the number 1 reason why we don't pray. The second reason that we don't pray is not just our view of him. We've got a Father who's willing, who's in heaven, so he's able to help us. Yeah. We're a child in need. So you got to embrace your childlike identity. And that's a shot to the pride. And that's an important piece of this, because pride doesn't pray. Pride thinks it makes more sense. You'll be more productive if you just get busy than to ask the unlimited, infinite God to help you with that project, with that meeting, to just put something in your head so that you know what to say, right? So we want to be prayerfully productive. So those are the 2 things. A high view of ourselves keeps us, so we need to bring it down. We're a child. A low view of God keeps us from praying, so we need to bring it up. And then the third thing, we need to specify our requests. And the 3 ones are, you can pray a specific Bible passage. Don't just read it, pray it. You can pray your plans. What are the outcomes? We pray in our family that, God, would you help them score tonight? You know, those kinds of things for our kids. And pray your problems. When you learn that, you know how to pray unceasingly, because we have unceasing problems. So if you have a problem, it's weighing on you, don't just sit there and wrestle with it and do it. Pray it. What do you want to see God do with that problem? And when we get specific, we give the invisible God an opportunity to become visible in our lives. And then once you offer those things and you get specific and you write it down, it's even better when you write it down. Then you trust God to do what's best with your requests. When you trust God to do what's best with your requests, that enables you to walk out of that conversation without the burden you brought into it. So here's the story. Let me end with this. My son, I came home, it was a long day at work. I was going through the mail, and I was thinking, you know, I don't even know what, and I hear, ouch, in the other room. And I thought, oh man, and I hear that, I'm telling, hear the march to justice, right? Kid comes in, you know, Dad, so-and-so hit me. And I said, I'll take care of it. Kid turns around, walks back, chest sticking out. And I hear him in the other room say, Dad said he's going to take care of it. And I thought, oh man. So here's the thing about it. He didn't know how I would take care of it. He didn't know when I would take care of it. He didn't know anything. He just knew who would take care of it. And because he knew the who, it enabled him to walk out of that conversation without the burden he brought into it. And that's childlike trust. That's what it means to cast your burdens on the Lord. So you bring your burdens to the Lord. You pray your problems. You pray what's on your heart with your family members or in your own life, your finances, your health, this country, the world, whatever it is. You pray that, and then you remember, if this is a God who can do something about it, then it's a God who can be trusted to do what's best with our request. And we have Bible verses all over the place that say he always does what's best for his kids. And when you really do trust him, then you can walk out of that conversation without the burden that you brought into it. You can be courageous in the face of potential worst case scenarios and say, you know what, I don't think it's best. I don't see how this accident, I don't see how this firing, I don't see how this is what's best for us, but I'm going to walk in faith, not by sight, because that's where true freedom is. And that's where he's calling us. So 21 days to childlike prayer. I think it leads, prayer is a pathway to so many other things we want in our lives. That's right. And we just don't realize it. And the great thing is it's available to anyone because of the blood of Christ.
Bro, thank you. So good. I'm so glad you wrote this book for 2 reasons. One, the kind of this historical moment, like we need something to help us get in God's presence, because people are weary and left to ourselves, man, we will just burn up.
Yeah.
And I love how accessible it is. I love short books that pack a punch. So way to go, brother. You guys grab Jed's book today, 21 Days to Childlike Prayer. And brother, I hope it's just a fun few months as all these stories come back, like this 3rd grader praying these prayers and seeing God answer his prayers. Well done, man.
Awesome. Thanks for the time, Freddie. Grateful for you in your ministry.
Yep. See you later, bro.
All right. See you, man.